What's going on? I'm Liz from Learn Robotics, and welcome to this episode of Learn Robotics with Liz, the show where I talk all things robotics and tech from a perspective of an engineer and share my thoughts on what I think you can do to learn more about tech and ultimately learn robotics. Stay tuned, we have an awesome episode for you here today. If you're watching on YouTube, consider subscribing to my channel or subscribing to the show on whatever podcast platform you're listening to. Ready? Let's get to it. Today I had the awesome pleasure of chatting with my friend and former colleague Aaron Lee. He is a mechanical engineer working in manufacturing engineering today, and we decided to put together 3 current events on various subjects and talk a little bit more about what our thoughts are for the future, where we see these areas going. We're going to be looking at semiconductors and manufacturing in the United States, electric vehicles, and the Metaverse. So stay tuned. We have episode 2 for you of Learn Robotics with Liz, starting now. Cool. Well, thank you for coming on my show. Aaron, why don't you introduce yourself so that everyone can learn who you are and your ties to engineering?
Sure. I'm by trade manufacturing engineer for the last almost 7 years now, specifically in aerospace. Studied mechanical engineering, so I like to think I'm somewhat tech savvy. We'll find out today, I suppose, and go from there.
So mechanical engineering, now you're in manufacturing engineering. What made you make that kind of like transition?
For me personally, I think manufacturing got me off away from the desk and towards working with people, and that's what I enjoy on my feet. I spend most of the time on the shop floor, so it's quite rewarding, quite enjoyable. There's a lot of face-to-face interaction, which I find still in this remote day and age rewarding and valuable. So.
Were things like a lot different during COVID?
At first nobody really knew what was going on. Everyone's super concerned about going to work. But as an ME or manufacturing engineer, I've been going in every single day. So, at one point we were like remote/hybrid for like a couple weeks, but then they realized, okay, if we just wear masks and sanitize and do contact tracing, we should be okay. And it seemed to have worked out so well. And so far, so well, 2 of the companies that I've been at. So
awesome.
Whereas, most of the other departments were remote or hybrid as well. So
yeah, it's been almost 2-3 years since I've been involved in like factory operations. Just as a quick aside, Aaron and I used to work together in manufacturing engineering. So it's is it kind of the same, or do you think it's transformed since we were working together with how manufacturing is done, like post-COVID, I guess?
I think it's pretty much the same, to be honest. I don't think there's been too many major changes, believe it or not. I mean, aside from a couple temperature checks or, requirements to wear masks, or some companies are moving towards, vaccine mandates. But beyond that, I think it's more or less the same. So.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear. I know a lot of people that I talk to are concerned about that particular piece and how things have changed and how there's now more paperwork and more requirements. But for the most part, I guess if you can look past that, it's probably pretty much the same stuff, different day.
Yeah, I'd say. I mean, I think that in and of itself is going to cause a challenge to some people. It really depends on the perspective and their reasons behind it. Inflexibility can lead to other issues, but we'll kind of leave that at that.
Yeah, for sure. So you picked out 3 cool articles. We'll just go through the structure of the show. Will be 3 current events in engineering, technology, robotics. We're going to read the headlines. We'll talk a little bit about what the article is. I will leave a link to all of the articles in the show notes. So if you want to go and check out the articles and read them for yourselves, this is just going to be kind of a commentary of our perspective on the technology, the current event, where we see this like fitting into the bigger picture. And I guess we can just go ahead and start with article number 1.
Sure. This one is titled How Asia Came to Dominate Chip Making and What the U.S. Wants to Do About It. So this was published in April this past year, but I think it's pretty relevant to today's perspective. It's from CNBC, And so pretty much there's like three keynotes. So Taiwan's TSMC, which is their main chip making company, and South Korea's Samsung Electronics control more than 70% of the semiconductor manufacturing market. The second bullet is a global semiconductor shortage and tensions with China have bolstered U.S. scrutiny of the supply chain and created a drive to regain leadership. And the third bullet is under President Joe Biden, the U.S. is looking to bring manufacturing back to American soil and reduce reliance on a handful of chip makers. So I think those are the main keynotes. And essentially, like for those who may not follow specifically the semiconductor industry, but pretty much everything has a semiconductor, from whether it be your coffee maker to your TV to your cell phone to your car. And due to an increase in consumer demand and also a unforeseeable change in the auto industry, like for the first 2 months of COVID, I think we're pretty far behind, to say the least. So that's more or less the gist of the semiconductor health of the industry, if you will.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I think in some of the more recent days, like if you've ever tried to buy a car, first of all, if you've tried to buy a car or you've tried to buy appliances or you've tried to get anything that requires a chip, then you've probably seen some delays or you've probably had some difficulties getting them. And I think this article kind of is talking about what is going on and like why this matters. With advancing technology becomes this increase in need for the actual hardware components that run the technology, and trying to figure out how do we shift, producing those chips back to the US or increase production of that so that we can even out that supply chain disruption. My personal thoughts, good luck, because I think it's going to take a lot of resources and a lot of time to get that back here. I don't know if we, from an economic standpoint, could even match the pricing of how it's being produced in China right now. Good, bad, or indifferent, I think that's just where we stand in terms of like, if I think about like designing like a PCB and manufacturing it, creating all the drawings for it, and then wrapping up the bundle of files and trying to get somebody to manufacture that in the US, I think we have a lot of work to do in terms of making it cost effective, making it streamlined in a way that we can produce pretty much whatever industries needs. That's just my view of it. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done to even come close to getting it back to the level of what we need to meet demand.
Yeah, 110%. So I guess the article does explain a little more, about some of the funding and some of the ongoing efforts to bring it back. And in short, there's like I think a government grant or government money is essentially going towards this. And outside the article, it doesn't mention it in the article, but to my knowledge, TSMC is actually building I think $20 billion plant in Arizona, and it's staggering the amount and the size that they're spending on this. I think their water consumption is supposed to be 4.7 million gallons per day, and then they do have a plan to recycle like 90% of the water. But it's still an enormous plant, and it's I think definitely a big project. They're building essentially some of the larger semiconductors. Some more technical ones are still going to remain in Taiwan, but it's essentially a copy of their plant from there. So I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah, I heard about another one, and this might just be like full integration PCB setup shops somewhere in Texas. I want to say Austin. I heard something like that recently. I just don't know how they're going to, I don't know how they're going to make money on it, truthfully. With wages increasing here, with even just raw material pricing, where like you could have a facility, you could throw money at it, but you still need supplies to do it, supplies to make it. And how, I think we're going to end up seeing, like, if it's a US chip, I think the price is going to end up going up. That's just my personal thought.
Yeah, I think either the price will go up or the profitability will go down. Or I think the third scenario alternative would be a focus on robotics, automation, and driving costs down. And that's kind of why I picked that article, because I feel like in general, all of manufacturing is moving towards automation and robotics, and I thought it'd be somewhat relevant from at least your perspective. And I definitely think that's kind of the future, right? In order to stay competitive, regardless of wherever the manufacturing is, we have to, look at headcount. We have to look at also the number of people who want to be in manufacturing. That's not, I don't think, something that everyone grows up saying, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to assemble this or make this, especially in this day and age.
And then you've got to factor in quality assurance. You've got to factor in whatever requirements and specs. I mean, this goes back to when I was in Phoenix at the UTC aerospace plant back when I was there. I don't even know what it's called now. It's probably had like 7 names since I've left. But I mean, they had all automatic procedures, and they were, cranking out components for the control system, the engine control systems. And I mean, you can't sit there and they did have soldering stations and they did have people doing that, but the amount of precision that you need to hit your requirement, to have that signed off, especially for something like aerospace. I mean, yeah, it needs to be automated, but you need to have people that understand, that machinery. That's different than somebody that knows how to solder, So I just don't know. I think there's a lot of opportunity, but at the same time, there's going to need to be like an increase in skilled labor that understands automation technology, but also can implement robotics in a way that's meeting requirements, meeting quality, and doing all those checks, you're in manufacturing, so you understand like defects and things like that, and making sure that you're producing good parts, you're doing it consistently, you're able to sign off on batches, but you also have the materials to run a batch, because if you're missing something in the middle of production, you're waiting. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of opportunity, but I think there needs to be some level of organizing and structuring these plants in a way that you're opening up roles that will directly impact production.
Yeah, I definitely think there will be a shift, right, towards all of that. So
more eye tests and solder skill tests. I think it's going to be more like controls, backgrounds, understanding how to adjust a controller, understanding how to digitize drawings and getting those into machines and mass production. I mean, I think a lot of plants are still like trying to figure that part out. And it takes a long time to go from some old manual process into something that's automated, that's good. And I mean, we've worked on cells where they've spent millions of dollars and the parts still suck, like they come out and they're like still garbage, and it would have been just faster and quicker and better and more reliable if somebody was just doing it by hand still. So.
Well, yeah. And you also have to think about like just the industry itself, right? You mentioned specifically aerospace, and typically it tends to be high mix, low volume from a perspective compared to, say, the auto industry. And there is the second article is about the auto industry. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, let's jump into the second article. What's the title of that one?
Okay. Title of that one is Preview 2022 Dodge Challenger Soldiers On with minor updates. So for those of you that may also be fellow gearheads, specifically the SRT has a specific model called the Hellcat. So the Hellcat, for those of you who don't know, is a very high horsepower car right out of the box.
You got to see these photos. If you want to just take a few seconds and like click on the show note for the Motor Authority website and look at these photos, this car is pretty cool looking. Let me let you in on a little secret. I didn't always want to be an engineer. And it only was until I walked into my first robotics club meeting that completely changed the trajectory of my life and led me down the path of robotics and engineering. If you're looking for a sign or signal to get into robotics, here's one for you. I have an awesome idea. Check out my online robotics training courses. We cover everything from coding to electronics to circuits to robotics, and you'll be building fully functional devices in no time. You can access our 24/7 online course with interactive modules and live chat with yours truly, so when you get stuck, you have help every step of the way. We'll even send you a free kit with your enrollment. Head on over to learnrobotics.org/course and start your robotics journey today.
Yeah, it's got nice body lines. I mean, the wheels look great from factory. You can't really beat that. They do show a photo of the interior, which has an automatic, which is auto tragic, but I do believe they sell them in manual. But anyways, this car is insane right out of the box. I mean, you're talking 800 horsepower is what the article says, and that's astronomical for a street car. I mean, you're talking. That's less than a 10-second car for sure. If you're a good driver, right?
Sure.
But in short, you know, if you look at on the road these days, I mean, you're seeing more and more hybrids, more and more electric cars. You don't see too many V8s with 800 horsepower, so it's kind of the last of a dying breed, if you will. And I think Dodge has actually publicized that their goal is to, by I think 2024, go fully electric. And for an American car, I mean, you think America, you don't think, oh, they're electric, they're conscientious about the environment.
Where are we going to get the batteries? Where are we getting that lithium? Where are we getting all those raw components?
No, and that's the other side. But
yeah,
and that's the other side of it, right? I don't think that enough people understand where all the batteries are coming from, and it kind of proves to my point, which is you can market anything. You can market a bad product or something that's not necessarily the healthiest, but if you market it well enough, it will sell and people will believe it, or they will either turn their blind eye to it.
Or you make the current state of the current option more expensive, and then you offer incentive for this new, electric vehicle or whatever. I've been seeing they have the new Jeep Wrangler electric, which I don't know how I feel about that. If you're like actually using it for off-roading, you really want to off-road in an electric vehicle. I don't know. I only say that because I have a Wrangler and it's not electric, but I did see that they are pretty cool looking. From an aesthetic standpoint, they look pretty cool. From a technical standpoint, I don't know. I feel like it's conflicting. Putting an electric or a hybrid, engine into a Wrangler. I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely think there's some questionability to that one.
I mean, even the new Mustang, I think, just went through the whole. I forget what Ford calls their electric vehicle fleet, but it doesn't even look like a Mustang, and it probably doesn't even perform like one. I don't know.
You're talking about their SUV that they made with the same Mustang badge, I think.
I don't know if it's their SUV or if it was their new Mustang. I don't know, like their new sports car. I don't know. I did see something though, and I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. It's like if you're looking to get a sports car and it has an electric engine, I don't know. Does that delegitimize you having a sports car? I don't know. I mean, how would you feel? Okay, for like this article, how would you feel like if this thing had an electric engine?
I have electric cars to the track or the drag strip, but to me, I mean, electric is not what I dreamed about as a kid, right? When I saw fast cars,
Come on, you weren't dreaming about Tesla?
Man, I really wish they hadn't. No, they're dead silent, right? I mean, sure, they might be fast. You get the ones with the dual motors or the bigger battery, whatever the case may be, but it definitely doesn't have the same feel to it as I imagine. I mean, the sound of an engine roaring, and you don't get that. You get the acceleration, sure, that's great, but to me, the other half is the sound, and also equally important to me is the shifting. Right, I've had only one automatic car in the last, I don't know, 10, 12 years, and it was fun, but it felt like it was missing something, right? Not having my left foot used to do anything on the track or what have you. Just it was a little bit dull, and I think it was good in other ways, right? But it still was missing that one thing. I think that'll be the thing with electric cars too. It's still missing that one. That's my personal
Yeah, I mean, I got to get you down here to teach me how to drive a
sure.
manual.
Well, but yeah, I may not have a choice. Eventually, I may have an automatic car. Eventually, may have an electric car or hybrid. But for right now, I think I'm a pretty big fan of diesels, of manuals, and of gas powered vehicles. So
Now,
for
what
now,
if
I'll
what
stick
if
to
your
it.
gas-powered car had some of the like the automation features, like the self-driving? I know what was it? Actually, I think it was the Ram that just came out where they have like that hands-free ad where you can sit and just like
Mm.
it'll drive and it'll know like how to change lanes and how do you feel about like automation being added into a car? Maybe it still is a gas or diesel, it's not fully electric, but it has more like brains, I guess.
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. I haven't thought about if like a car I had was to be retrofitted, but personally, I find driving to be an experience. And particularly an enjoyable one. So having to take that away would be like, oh man,
So you're not a fan of
I'd
the
have to.
automated parallel parking feature on some of the new Buicks?
I mean, I don't have to parallel park currently, but but I mean, in general, I would say, even though I commute 40 miles each way to work, I still would question, the automated aspect. I don't know, not necessarily just from a safety perspective, just from what I'm used to at least. I, I think I
Right.
think to have if I had the option, could I turn it on or off? Sure, maybe on a long road trip would be great, but I mean, I've done quite a few cross country trips, and in the last 2 years, I've done several 1,000-mile trips. Like I did one from essentially Florida to California, California to New Hampshire, North Dakota to California. So I've been on a lot of trips, and if I were to automate it, I don't think it'd be as memorable because I specifically remember certain things like driving through Montana without chains and going through a single lane on roads and whatnot. So I don't think it would have been as enjoyable. You can't say, "Oh, I drove that," No big
Right.
deal. Yeah.
Well, you just have to think about like all the people learning how to drive now versus like when we learned how to drive. A lot of people don't even like know how to use like mirrors or learn how to use anything, like you know what I mean,
Yeah.
like they don't know how to like back up without the camera,
Well,
so you start introducing all these automated features into vehicles and then you've got to wonder like are these people going to actually know how to drive like a car that doesn't have this feature, or is that like the point? Are we engineering old skills out of the system so that new skills replace them, like oh you use your camera not like your rear view mirror?
mhm. Yeah, I think in a lot of ways we're losing um, not what makes us human, but a lot of those like skills. For example, everyone these days I think calls somebody to go and fix something or take care of something for them. People don't even go grocery shopping on their own anymore. It's changing. Times are changing. I don't want to be one of the naysayers. I don't want to be one of the people who are a shift in the momentum. And I can respect it. It just may not be for everyone. Is what I would say. So
Yeah, that's for
I
sure. I
start to sound
mean,
like an old timer.
yeah, at the sake of sounding like someone old, I don't know. There's definitely some technologies I think we could do without, and there's definitely some newer technologies that I think we can learn to appreciate. Like especially, I'm thinking like some of the smart home and like security kind of side of things, which is kind of good and helpful. Um, but yeah, certain things like makes me question like are we engineering out some of the key things of like what a person should know how to do like when they're driving, like like they're operating a motor vehicle, like we're basically teaching them to rely on technology instead of like their surroundings and actually paying attention to what they're doing. So I don't know, we'll have to see how things pan out in the next few years. Okay, so we
Yeah,
have the
agreed. Speaking of big changes, I was going to say the last article, is about
yeah.
Meta. So
How do
the
you feel
title of the
about
article is
this?
not quite the metaverse. So let me get through the title. So it's not quite
Oh,
the metaverse, but Meta is launching its virtual world. So
oh
in
man.
short, this article essentially talks about what happening with Meta, aka previous Facebook, and it's quite um, it's quite a marvel if you ask me. It's almost a stretch, right? So essentially, from my perspective, at least my understanding, and someone out there can correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds as if we're trying to enhance all the different things that we're doing right now. So I went on YouTube and I was trying to understand, okay, what does Mark Zuckerberg really want to do? And essentially, his first snippet of Meta is it's like he's FaceTiming family, and then he exists as a virtual reality character, right? He's got essentially think like of an emoji, but like as a character in this world. And he's FaceTiming family, he's playing games, he's meeting with people online. It's a interesting concept, and I guess my thought is that it kind of aligns with that momentum shift of everything is changing, right? So it seems as if we're trying to create a virtual reality of Facebook and live, and I think that's a unique concept. And I think if anything, the more we become reliant on electronics and technology, the less we're able to actually socialize and function in many regards. I know we're evolving as you know technologically and culturally, but it's a big shift, to say, oh, we should just meet on VR instead of just meet in person. I have the same perspective, for remote. I'm like, certain things you really can't do remote, certain things you can,
Yeah.
but
Uh,
it's
I
debatable.
really don't know what they were thinking with this. It's kind of like if you're not familiar and you haven't seen any of the ads. The ads are, in my opinion, a little creepy. It's basically like bringing Sims into reality, like the game Sims. It's like you're in there, you have like your own little character, you have like your own little digital outfits, and you can kind of be whatever you want to be. And I don't know. It's like a let's meet, in the interwebs of this metaverse and conduct day-to-day life wearing a heads right. I think you have to wear like a VR headset, and you're like immersed in this world. I don't know. It's to me, I just think it's one a little bit out of touch with where I think we should be at socially. I think it's further deepening us into this whole like Zoom took over all of last year, and a lot of people are still meeting via Zoom and haven't had an in-person meeting in like over a year, or haven't done anything like from a work or from a social standpoint. They haven't done anything in person. So it's like, do people know how to socialize in person anymore? Do people know how to conduct business in person anymore? And this is just further digging us into that hole of let's be whatever we want to be in this virtual world, and have all these powers and things that we wouldn't necessarily have in real life, and operate like a video game. And I don't know, I'm not a video game player. I never really got into those. So I don't know. I feel like if we were to take away real life as it is, the real world, and have to meet in metaverse to conduct operations, I think that would be a big adjustment for me personally. As much as I love technology and the advancement of it, I just don't think it's the same. Want to be featured on an upcoming episode of Learn Robotics with Liz? Head on over to anchor.fm/learnrobotics and upload a message. I'll be picking through my favorite questions, comments, and ideas and featuring them on the show. Again, visit anchor.fm/learnrobotics and click message to upload your audio question today. And hey, you just might be featured on our next episode. How do you
Yeah,
have like a real life, in a virtual space?
I agree with you. I think it already kind of is happening though, if you think about it. Like you go out anywhere, you go to the store, you go to a restaurant, like you see people waiting 9 times out of 10, they're probably on their cell phones already. And it wouldn't surprise me if soon we see people with virtual reality goggles on in public. So
Well, it reminds me of like
I
when that Pokemon Go came out. Like when was that? Like 2016 or something? People were walking
yeah,
around looking for Pokemon.
yeah. I think it's already happening more than we can recognize. And I think at this point I have to throw the term out there, but you got to think about herd mentality, right? If other people are doing it right, maybe I should do. And I think that's kind of what it's become. Because okay, if you're in a room waiting, or if you're like, whatever, wherever you may be, like if you're waiting in line or if you're waiting somewhere and everyone else is on their cell phone, they're clearly not willing to engage you in any conversation whatsoever. First off, if you like engage people in conversation in public these days, they're like, "Why are you talking to me?" You know, like you don't make small talk anymore. Nobody really does. At least from what I observe or what I've seen, and it's changed. And so I don't know. I don't think there would be much stopping from a lot of these people from doing something like that, from joining the metaverse, being in the metaverse. You know,
I don't know. Maybe this could be like that
I don't know the
next
statistics.
generation of like the internet. Like when the internet came out, it was like you'd use your dial up and you'd go on for like 10 minutes and it was kind of boring because nothing was there. And then now if you think of the internet, it's like everything's on the internet and everything is there. If you need information, you just, search for it on the internet and you find it. And I think we'll probably see something like that, maybe history repeats. Maybe something similar will be like with this metaverse and things are more like, what is it, 3-dimensional, I guess, in a virtual space. I wonder what this is going to do to business, truthfully. Like am I going to have, learn robotics in the metaverse? Like, can I just is it going to be like a different type of thing, or is it,
Yeah,
like a website, because like if you don't have a business website now, it's considered like strange. But if you had a business website, in the early 2000s, you were strange. You know what I mean? Like, so
yeah,
I don't know.
it's true. We'll see. We'll see how that momentum shifts.
I think you could buy these glasses now. The Quest 2, yep, starts at $299. So I don't know. I don't know that I'm ready to join that. I think I'm pretty happy with being tied to the MacBook Pro that I'm on, like 20 hours a day. I don't think I need to be walking around wearing glasses too, or goggles, or whatever they are.
Yeah, I would most likely agree.
Awesome. Well, that was the third article. Thank you for hopping on this podcast with me and talking a little bit about technology. It's great to have you on and great to catch up. Where can people find you online if they want to get in touch with you?
Thank you. Oh, that is a very good question. Well, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably the most public way to contact me. But I might get a lot of, or we get a lot of random messages on LinkedIn. I like to leave that anonymous for now. I think if they want to comment on the podcast, I'll definitely check it out and then get back to them.
Sure. Yeah. And so if you want to get in touch with Aaron, just let me know, contact me and I'll put you in touch with Aaron. If you're starting your engineering kind of career or you're interested in manufacturing engineering, Aaron is a good person to reach out to. He has a lot of experience. We were in rotational programs together. We've kind of seen a lot of different areas of corporate life. Aaron has been in a lot of companies too, with different roles in engineering and leadership and management. So thank you again for hopping on this podcast. I appreciate your time and we will be in touch.
Likewise, it's great to join you. Thank you for having me.
That wraps up this episode of Learn Robotics with Liz. If you liked the episode, please share it with a friend. And don't forget to subscribe to the show so that you don't miss any upcoming episodes. I'm Liz from Learn Robotics, and I'll see you next time.